Lee and Sarah, and today we have our special guest, Amy Lay. And I hope your New Year's is good as so far. It's just the fifth day, believe it or not. We are already 5 days into the new year. So what have you done to start a brand new year? And this is what
Oh
we are
gosh.
focusing on. Our theme of the month is how do you set up your goal? What do you plan for a brand new year that is happening? But it's going to go by quickly if you don't grab it and start thinking about it. And we're sharing story of how people start their beginnings again, how they rebuild their lives, and how they propel it in a way that they're thriving.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, please help us start up the conversation.
Of course, I will be happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so glad to be back again, talking to you again. And today, we have special guests. I'm not going to take a lot of time because you heard me 170 times already. So,
It's okay. I never grow tired of it.
um, just briefly, I'm Sarah. I grew up in Cambodia. I struggled through the system when I was in college. Our country was taken over by the communist regime, and when they came in, they turned our country upside down. Basically, they destroyed our country and they destroyed our life. I was nearly, nearly almost die, just to tell you the truth. But because of my positive attitude, I was able to hang on. I did not give up hope. And that's why you see me here. And throughout the conversation, if I can have any time to inject, I will share a little bit. But if not, I share my story through my book. I have a book. Believe it or not, it's in the book. That's my book. You can find this book on my website, saraim.com, SARAIM.com. And I also go out in the community and sharing my inspiration story that hope to impact people's life in a positive way. So that's all I want to say today. Back to you, Lee.
Woo! She did it under 2 minutes. Yoo!
Good job.
Oh wow. Actually, we are all refugee in this panels here. I think I have found my shipmate. Amy is also one of the many boat people, and we share similar background, different setting, different timeline. But my story is from the sea. I think many of you probably have heard it too. If you have not been to our platform, if this is your first time, let me introduce myself really quick. My name is Lee Tran. I am one of the former boat people refugees that we came to United States in 1980. And I was a teenager back then, fleeing our birth country from Vietnam and went through a lot of trepidation in order to acclimate it into the life that we are here right now. But I also share my story on my TEDx stage and also on my memoir. Um, Lots of research, lots of things that to go back in the past and digging through lots of information that I didn't understand back then. But then if you want to hear more, just go to my website, leetran.com. That's the shortest way that you can find out information about me. But today, I will like to invite Amy to share with us her story. Now, I think she's a 3 times author and many more. And it's very inspirational story that where she come from. And I just met her probably less than a month or two ago, and it's all by coincidence that we were belong to in the same refugee Facebook group, I believe. and somehow
Right.
we connected and we talk and we exchange books and fascinating women, fascinating stories. So Amy, so welcome, and I'm so happy that you are able to be here to
Thank you.
share with us your story. So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and your story.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me. So my story is very similar to many of the boat refugees. When Saigon fell in April of 1975, things changed for our country. And my mom, who was a single mother, and I decided, or she decided, that we were going to leave the country. And this was in 1979. We ended up taking my cousin with us at the last minute, and ended up in a refugee camp in Indonesia, Galang, and was there for a little bit before we were sponsored, luckily, to America. Seattle was our home. And I came to the States in 1980 when I was 5 years old. Now, I was also very sick when I was born, and the doctors didn't think I was going to live. And they said that maybe I would live till the age of 5. But I beat them, and
You beats the odds.
barely, because when I was 6 years old, I got rushed to the hospital at Seattle Children's Hospital and had open heart surgery. And then it was, well, she might live until she's 18 if she's lucky. And here I am in my 40s, 47, and thriving. So that's kind of the short of it. And but anyways, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to the chat.
Wow. Um, I don't know where to begin because it sounds like, the whole life is revolving in a 2 minutes talk. But I know that from reading the book that you have written about your mom, I have so many questions that I want to ask you. How on earth were you able to even just, did you, first of all, you must have a very, very close relationship with your mom, and you probably heard a lot of story from her firsthand in order to be able to just get the skeleton of the story is hard enough, but you flesh it out with so many detail that it's just incredible.
Well, I will say that, my mom and I, it's always been just the two of us growing up, and my father was not in the picture. So we were definitely close. My mom passed away in February of 2017 from lung cancer. And so that was what caused me to reflect. I quit my job at the time. I was working for corporate America, and decided to just take some time off to mourn and reflect. And the best way that I could honor her was to write her story. And actually, I think with the first generation, they dealt with a lot of trauma and PTSD, and mental health was a huge thing that nobody talked about.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a lot of stories from her. When I decided to write her story, but fictionalize it, it was because I didn't have all the pieces. And my cousin Tree, who escaped with us, he was the one who filled in a lot of the holes for me. And honestly, it took me 2 years to write and publish that book, the first one, Snow in Vietnam. But it was also through a lot of interviews and a lot of, I did some traveling, and if I saw a war veteran that had a Vietnam, war hat on, I immediately just like ran to them and asked if they'd be willing to share their story. So yeah, that's how I was able to write it and do a lot of research. Excuse me. And then, I didn't think I was going to be an author as a career, but it just kind of happened. Snow in Vietnam did well, and then they wanted a sequel, and so my fans got a sequel, and then they wanted a third book, and so the third one just published in December 2020.
So you launching this beginnings of your life, of your second career in a
Mm-hmm.
nonchalant way that just to honor your mom, and somehow it take off. It just kind of sprint
Yeah.
you into the direction that you did not plan, or did you actually know that you're gonna be able to sustain with the second career um, in writing?
And here's the thing is that authors really don't make a lot of money. It's such a saturated market, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to do a lot of promoting and a lot of, I'm naturally an introvert, but I try to push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone so that I can promote the book. And it's not for the sales piece, it's really to share our stories. And I think as the second generation or the 1.5 generation of refugees,
Yeah.
you know, it's our job to keep that story alive.
Right.
So,
And
and
it
I
just,
think a lot of us are more creative.
mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. I think definitely you're definitely right, because even just hard enough for me, and I lived through those period, and I still have to go back to Google's and interview people and just make sure that the story are butt together. You know, it's like they're not going to have any gaps. And what I love about your writing is so well, I'm glad it said it's a novel, because sometimes I thought, wow, you know, and your imagination is really broad, and I was like, I've learned something. I don't know how true this is, but it's definitely seems like a lot of stories that flow in a way that I believe that it could happen. So bravos to you to take the time to do that. And the other factor is it must be, is it hard to write as your mom's voice?
It's very hard in the sense that when I have to write really difficult scenes, like the potential ringing scenes, like, oh my gosh, you know, my mom was flesh and bones. And so that was hard. But at the same time, I'm very much my mother's daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just the two of us growing up for most of my life. And so we were very symbiotic in our relationship and our personalities. And, you know, we love to have fun and just tease a
Yeah.
lot. And so, yeah, in that respect, it was easy to write my mom's story. And, you know, I'll tell you, the first book is 75% true. So a lot of what you read actually did happen to my mom. And that was through some of the perspective from my mom's stories, my cousin, my dad, you know, who did provided a little bit of input as well.
And she did fall in love with the
Yeah.
GI. And
She
I
fell in love
don't
with
want to,
GI.
well,
She had a French boy that
audience,
loved her.
if you are curious about what we're talking about, go grab yourself a copy, because it's very entertaining and educating as well.
You had to show that book. What is the name of the first book, so that people Snow in Vietnam?
Snow in Vietnam.
Yeah. And then my
Well, she
second
literally
book,
translates Snow mean the name of her mom's, and she's translated literally as the name.
yep.
Okay.
My mom's name is Quick, which means snow. And then this is the second book, Snow in Seattle. It's about how we thrived in the States as refugees. And then my third book, which I want to do a little quick giveaway if we get a chance.
Uh-huh.
So this is actually the proof copy of book 3 that I got. It's all in color. It's
Is it
got
coming out?
pictures. It's got a bunch of recipes in the back. And I'm inviting anybody to come over to your webpage, the From Surviving to Thriving webpage on Facebook between now and Saturday, and just make a comment. You know, watch this video, make a comment, and then we'll do a raffle drawing on Sunday, and I'll send out.
All right.
this
Thank
copy.
you. Thank you. So we
Yeah.
got a lot of Vietnamese recipe in there.
Yes. Some of the traditional stuff. One of my favorites is the braised catfish and the pho, but the pho is actually done in an Instant Pot, so it's a little bit modernized.
That's okay. Easier way. I have a
traditional
traditional recipe that my friend gave me, and I never really attempted because it just looked too elaborate. And I was just like,
oh, you're gonna love the Instant Pot version. 3 hours, it's done. So good.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, Sarah, you have any question? Because I'm gonna hog her if you don't ask. I have a lot of questions.
I had question, but now I forgot what I want to. Oh, I want to ask about your dad. Where is your dad?
My dad lives in San Antonio, Texas. I live in Oklahoma City area, Oklahoma. And, you know, we see each other about once a year. We actually just reconnected in January of 2018 was when we reconnected. And that was because he couldn't get a hold of my mom, and that's ultimately how we reconnected. And he and I had a conversation, and I told him what happened, that she had passed. And so January 2018 was when I saw him for the first time in many, many moons. And it was
Wow.
a very emotional reunion. You know, he just cried like a baby and apologized left and right. And
Wow.
when you read my 3 novels, or at least my first one, you'll understand why he
Mhm.
was in such terrible tears.
So,
But yeah.
so when you publish it, you did have not a clue where he is, or even just run through him to see if he approve, or anything. You,
Well, so the first book was published in May of 2019. So at that
okay,
point, we had reconnected.
okay,
Before I published, I asked my dad if he was okay with it, because I told him, you know, that he wasn't portrayed in a very good light, very positive light.
yeah,
And it was a lot of mom's and my anger uh,
hmm,
put out there on
yeah,
book 1 and book 2, really, you know. But he was very supportive, and he said there's so many point of views, and you know, he was
yeah,
like, that was your experience, and you should
right.
be true to that. And
Hmm.
so that was very
I
sweet.
think
And
that's
but
part of the memoir is whatever you feel. I mean, the writing, the story is yours, and there's
Mhm.
people in the memoir that it could have totally different perspective or view.
Right.
Um, you know, many of us live through the same condition, the same circumstances, and we come out with all different stories. So
Yes.
I think that's a part, the beauty of a memoir is, you know, whatever you experience, that's your experience that you are telling. So have you been back to
Yeah.
Vietnam yet?
4 times actually, and
Wow.
the last time I went back was with my husband, my son, my mother-in-law, and my honorary dad. His name is Michael Harmon. He was a Vietnam War veteran, and my character Sam is based off of him. And he had never been back, and so, you
So
know,
in the
I
story,
took him.
Sam actually got blown away with the pistols or
Oh,
something.
spoiler alert! Yes.
Well, you go
um,
grab the book. Go grab the book.
there's a lot in the book, so there's a lot of drama, a lot of pain, a
So
lot of
those, yeah, how did
everything.
you even come up to all those scenario? I was like, this girl's imagination is quite, I
It's
mean,
out there.
yeah.
Well, like I said, you know, 75% of the book is true,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't too hard. But I read a lot of stories. I talked to a lot of people as well, and I just wanted as full of a story as I could of the refugee
Yeah,
experience and the people,
right.
and you know, the war veterans. And so there's a little bit of everything in there, because I wanted to have their voices heard
Yeah.
through this platform.
What I love is you actually describe down to the street plays. And I was just like, because I lived there and, you know, not quite in Saigon. I'm a town next to Saigon, which is in the Chinese community, but we went to the city like almost every weekend. And I was like, I don't even
Yeah.
remember those names. So you probably
Well, that was
Google a
part of
lot.
I Googled, or I should say Bing, because I used to work for Microsoft, but
Uh-huh.
I researched also through just my travels, you know.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is about doing historical fiction is you got to really get it right. And I found out that some street names changed names
Oh
too, you know,
yeah.
or some cities changed after the turnover. So yeah,
Yeah.
you got to do your due diligence.
But I I I want to say that I feel not as a 1.5 generation. I felt like I'm a limbo generation. I mean, like just
Mm,
because that I felt I was old enough to understand things, but still not strong enough to be able to root it
yeah.
in what I have learned. So so
You were
writing this,
17, is that right?
I was 16 when I left, and that was 1979. And your mom and I actually sharing the same refugee camp, Galang. I was in
Yeah.
Galang for 20 days, but I was in
Mm-hmm.
Indonesia.
You were at Hawkins too. in Singapore
Yeah,
for 2 weeks.
Singapore for 12
Yeah.
days, and I went back Singapore last year, luckily before the pandemic, and I was
Mhm.
able to go back and visit that camp. Now they're turning to a military base, so it's no longer something that you can even tour or look at.
I see. Wow.
Yeah, so lots of different memories, but it is true. Some of the people tell us that sometimes it's really hard to tell a PTSD story. Sometimes it takes a long time, and usually 40 years is when
Hmm.
you are able to talk about it. So I just feel so connected with you when I read about, your writing about your mom and the stories and just I'm also a first time author. I don't intend to write 3 books, but I think I might have to do at least 2 because my story just got too long and they cut me off at 25. They say, well, you're going to have to do book 2 because it's just too much in here.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, it's kind of something different. It's fun. But I think that what happened is I really like the fact that all 3 of us here are preserving history
Yes.
because so many people who read our books and said that they have no idea the life and the people and the culture on the other side of the ocean, what people experience. All they know is about Vietnam War or the killing fields, Khmer Rouge. But to be
Hmm.
actually inside and share that story. And for you, I don't know how much you actually remember when you left Vietnam, when you were 5. So
Yeah.
what kind of vivid memory do you have at that age?
There's, yeah, I mean, I remember a few things. Like I definitely remember burning our boat and watching
Mhm.
it go in flames with the beautiful sunset in the background. That was just amazing to me as a 5-year-old. I remember sleeping in the jungles in Indonesia and
Was that a
freaking
lot
out
of
about
fear
snakes.
at that time?
What was that?
Was that a lot of fear? Uh,
For me, no, because when you're young, it's an adventure.
mhm.
Ignorance is kind of bliss. You don't exactly understand the depth of
Yeah.
what's
And
going
how
on.
sick were you?
Yeah, I was very, very sick. I was born with a hole in my heart, and I was always pale or always blue and really frail and thin. Um, and didn't eat a lot. So, if you talk to my cousin Tree, he would tell you that, they would always check on me, look
Talk to
over
you
and
later.
just
Sorry.
afraid that they might die or that I might die, and so it was scary for them more than for me. And my cousin who was, in his teens at the time, for him, he understood the gravity of the situation, but he was also a little bit more on the rebellious wild side where he didn't really care what was
Mhm.
happening. He just took it one day at a time. But until later, he was just like dying to go back to Vietnam. He just didn't want to be there.
Did your mom ever
So
went back with you?
my mom,
Hmm.
yeah, the very first time we went back to Vietnam together to our home country, that was surreal. It was very humbling. We spent a whole month there. And I took
Oh.
a picture of everything. I took pictures of like the toilet. I mean, because it was just so fascinating and new to me. I took a picture of chickens, with their skinny little legs. Um,
You find a
but
lot
yeah,
of here's another giveaway, another dirty butts, lots of dirty butts running around.
yes, Mong Yao, lots of dirty butts. So my chicken in the story is named Mong Yao. Um, but yeah, I just, I when I left Vietnam on the first trip, I was dreaming in Vietnamese. I was thinking in
Wow.
Vietnamese, and this is me in my gosh, how old was I? I was 28 or something like that.
And you speak very fluent with your mom in Vietnamese, I suppose that.
Not really, Lee. So when I came, my mom forced me to learn Vietnamese, and I stuck with it for 2 years. So I can read, but I don't understand what I'm reading,
Uh-huh.
and I can speak in a conversational way, but it's very basic Vietnamese. I can get by in the country by myself. Um, but I couldn't have a political debate with you.
Did you ever have like those conflict of, your identity as a kid who left Vietnam at that age?
Yeah.
What feeling when you're growing up? Did you feel like you're missing something?
When I was in elementary school, no. Even
Mhm.
though I was like one of two Asian kids, I didn't feel left out or, didn't feel the racism or anything like that. It was when I went to California when I was 13, surprisingly, that I felt that. And I was surrounded by more Vietnamese refugees, more Asians, Hispanics, Blacks, like
Yeah.
just a variety of different ethnicities. And that's when I felt the racism. And that's actually in my third book, because that one is a coming of age novella, and it talks about my life between ages 13 and 17 and the struggles that I had to deal with between the two cultures, different expectations between your peers and your
I
parents.
think that's the toughest age. That
It
is the
is.
toughest age, and that is why I felt like, even moving forward, growing up, I just never felt like I get out of that stage. I always feel like I trap in that period, because when the communists coming in, I was 12, so
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a lot of things that your mom did back
Yeah.
then, and
Yeah.
then coming to America. So I always felt like I am no man's land. I was like, I don't belong anywhere. I don't know anything. So it take you up to 13 to realize that, your identity is different. And I think we experience a lot of that for that age. And I totally, get the teenagers um, growing up. That's like doing your puberty and your hormones changing and everything is changing. You're questioning everything.
Yep.
um
Yeah.
but it take us to like in middle age in order to find out the roots. That's how I wanted to step away, being like not Chinese, not Vietnamese, not American. I just want to be like me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um and it
Yeah.
took a long time for me to feel that now
I
I
read your
really have.
book, Lee, and you had a lot on your plate and your little shoulders. So, I mean,
I think we all do. I think we all do.
it's, yeah.
My disadvantage or advantage, depending how you see it, that I was the oldest. I am the oldest, so there's a lot of things that I'm sure you understand from your mom. Your mom is probably the youngest, so
Mm-hmm.
she's got a lot least burden. I mean, in Asian culture, always the oldest got to represent your parents and do everything for your parents.
Right.
So that's the disadvantage part, but the advantage part that you can be the boss and you can boss people around.
So Amy, are you the only child?
I am. I have half brothers and sisters that I've met once. They live, well, when I met them, they lived in Texas. Um, my dad was married to an American woman who had bought a one-way ticket in the middle of the war to fly to Vietnam to look for him because she fell in love with him because he was in the States on a educational scholarship. That's how they met. But yeah, she ended up with the war ending. She took him back to the States with her and raised their family there. And that's why my mom and dad, were not together because of the second marriage.
Yeah. And I
So
think there's a lot of pride to it too, because your mom could have just get away with him
she could
and
have,
she
and that's
refused.
in the first book. I don't know if you got to that part yet, but
I've get past that part. Yeah.
yeah. So much drama.
Well, I think that's why I write a good book, because you have to review all those dramas. It's like when you don't have a good story, then everything just pretty much the same. Um, so so there's many beginnings for you. If you have one advice for our audience about how they can just move on to rebuild their lives, looking forward, what would be the one thing that you would tell them, starting this year, starting this month? How are we gonna just not look back but look forward?
I think in order to move forward and rebuild our life and our brand, it's you really have to forgive yourself and move on.
Yeah.
We're all human, bad things happen to us. We do bad things. But if we can't forgive ourselves and not necessarily forget, because that's kind of our history and that's our, you know,
Yeah.
our life story. But if you can forgive yourself, even if it's just one day at a time, one moment at a time, one thing at a time, I think in that way we can always move forward a little bit at a time. So
I agree. I mean, if we can't forgive ourselves, then there's no way we can forgive anybody else that who wrong us.
yeah,
So I think the first step is admit that we are forgivable. We can forgive ourselves. We can forgive the people who wrong us, or we wrong them.
yeah,
And
exactly.
the next step is forgive other people who did us wrong. So forgive ourselves is the first step, but forgive other people
Mm-hmm.
to
Yes.
Yeah.
live peacefully. You cannot hold grudge, hold the resentment for the rest of our life.
Yeah. I think that's really the only way to move forward, is to
Yeah.
acknowledge the past, but to also forgive and move on.
And accept it. I think,
Yeah.
if all our audience are listening, I would say that it's very therapeutic if you have a drama of your history past, or your family, or your inherited things that you didn't ask for, and you just get it. Write something. Even you don't have to publish it if you don't want the world to read your story. But I think writing is very therapeutic because it makes you dig it deeper. Where did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? So you can move forward. Because if you just sweep under the rug, um, and you leave, but it's not going to be free completely. I think you always looking back with a question mark. So for me, I think that this book that I wrote, and I'm sure you did too, Amy, that's why you decided to go second and third and fourth book.
Therapeutic. Yes.
But
So, do you ever regret leaving your previous career to take on this career? No.
No, no, it's way much less stress. I'm my own boss. I am lucky though, because I do have a husband that takes care of me. And so any sales that I get from the books really go right back into my publishing and my promoting.
yeah,
But I used to work for Microsoft and T-Mobile. I worked for the board of directors, the senior vice president, or the senior leadership team. And it was like 80-hour work weeks and traveling nationally and internationally. And so, it's just, as much as
yeah.
I loved it, I was done climbing that corporate ladder when my life shattered and my mom passed,
Mm.
and it was time to think about
Well,
something.
at some point, money is not everything, and the same here. I mean,
Yeah,
I could have stayed and make money, but then what for? I mean, if you're
yeah,
not happy, and I think the only way you can start to reflect is when you have time. You can't do it when you're rushing 80 hours a week work and constantly on the run, because there's no time to slow down or reflect. So if you want to write a good book, or even just contemplate about your life and how to make it better, it's the only way is to just kind of put everything into a halt and stop and pause and then
yeah.
and reflect.
Yep.
So I am so glad that we are all in the same boat here. I mean, we are all at the stage that our husband is bearing the burden instead of us.
Yay, husbands.
I know, yeah,
We're
right?
so lucky. We really are. But
We
I
are,
gotta say, whatever it is, follow your passion and your dream, whether it be writing or
right.
film or whatever, because if
And this is a legacy you're
perseverance,
building.
persistence, it will get
Yeah.
you there.
I
Yeah.
think that that's what we're doing. We're doing this is to make impact, to make to change lives, and to build our own legacy in a sense, because we don't want to go to the tomb with all the treasure that we've learned from our lives. So I am so happy that I'm able to connect with you and have you up here and share your story. So if everybody listen to this episode, please go check Amy's books out, and you will have a really good weekend that you just want to sink your teeth into every word that she write. And she's quite a writer for somebody who just decided to do that on the second career. So
Second career. So you give a lot of people hope because if we, the immigrant, a child of immigrant can do this, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, well, I think we're passing the time, but thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And please share the conversation. And if you have anyone that will have a thriving story that you want to share with us, please PM us and let us know so we can bring you on. Thanks
so,
again, Amy.
so
Thank you.
let Amy review her offer, her challenge, so that
Okay, there you go. I'm putting my name in for the comment.
You're eligible.
yeah, just make a comment, and Amy will will pick.
Raffle up she's gonna raffle up the prize for her third book. When is it published?
It was published, well, the ebook was published on Christmas Day, and then the print copies were on December 31st. And I will be raffling this copy off on Sunday. And all you have to do is just jump on over to your Facebook page, make a comment on this
Make a
episode.
comment. Yes, I hope you
Yeah.
listen to it. And thank you so much. Amy's actually the first one ever in our group here making offer to our audience. So this is gonna be something we're gonna latch on from now on.
This is a new tradition then.
Yes,
I love it.
yes, we are. Oh, wow, this is awesome. So thank you again for doing that. And now we're going to start a new tradition now. So,
Yay.
all right. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you do make a comment so you can win her book, or else me and Sarah, it's just two of us.
Yeah.
We're going to fight for it. All right. Have a good night, everyone. See you too. No,
night.
not
Bye.
tomorrow.
Thank
See you on
you.
Thursday. See you on Thursday.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.